Hey friends, and welcome back to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. Today, I want to share with you a powerful, yet often overlooked, secret that can truly transform your English listening skills. It's all about understanding how we really learn the building blocks of language, the words themselves. Our topic today is how to really learn vocabulary. Insights from a polyglot. Here, on this podcast, our purpose is to explore the English language in a gentle, calm, and deeply personal way, often through stories and reflective thoughts. You see, effective listening isn't just about hearing sounds. It profoundly depends on your expectation. What you anticipate hearing. What you expect the words to be, based on your knowledge and your comfort with the language. If you find that this episode resonates with you, or if it helps you in any way on your English journey, I would be truly grateful if you would consider liking this episode, subscribing to our channel, or perhaps leaving a kind comment below, letting me know what topics you'd love for us to discuss next. Your support means the world, and it helps us continue creating content like this. And please, I encourage you to stay with me until the very end of this podcast, because the insights we'll share today will build upon each other, leading to some truly valuable takeaways about vocabulary acquisition. We'll be exploring the subtle dance between input and output in language learning, the fascinating difference between active and passive vocabulary, how our incredible brains actually absorb new words, and the profound connection that ties all four language skills together. A polyglot, a master of many languages, often offers a profoundly different perspective on how we truly acquire vocabulary. Their core method, especially in early language learning, centers around something surprisingly simple yet incredibly powerful: input-based learning. It's not about drilling words in isolation or forcing them into your memory with flashcards. Instead, it's about gentle, consistent immersion. Imagine yourself as a child, learning your very first words. You didn't sit with a dictionary, did you? No, you absorbed them from the world around you, through countless hours of listening to your parents, your family, the stories they read, the conversations they had. This natural acquisition is precisely what this method recreates. In early phases, the focus is squarely on high-frequency vocabulary. These are the words that appear most often in everyday communication, the building blocks of any language. How do we encounter these high-frequency words? Not through rote memorization, but repeated listening and reading. Think of it as painting with broad strokes. You listen to stories, conversations, podcasts, and read simple texts, perhaps graded readers or short articles. As you repeatedly encounter the same words in different contexts, their meaning gently reveals itself, not through direct translation, but through the surrounding narrative. It's a slow, unfolding process, much like watching a seed gradually sprout and grow into a plant. This is why, from a polyglot's perspective, flashcards are often viewed as less effective. While they might offer quick, superficial recall, they often strip the word of its living context. A word on a flashcard is like a single brick without a wall. You know what it is, but you don't truly understand its purpose, its place in the grand structure of language. It's a very different experience from meeting a word naturally, within a flowing sentence, within a compelling story. That's where the magic truly happens, where connections are forged in the brain. The emphasis is always on meaningful content. What does that mean? It means engaging with language you genuinely care about, content that sparks your interest or curiosity. If you love cooking, listen to cooking podcasts in English. If you're fascinated by space, read articles about astronomy. When content is meaningful, your brain is more receptive, more open to absorbing new information. It's not a chore, it becomes an enjoyable exploration, and words become intrinsically linked to the emotions and ideas evoked by the content. The belief is that words stick, not through sheer willpower, but over time, with enough exposure. Think of it like a gently falling rain that slowly saturates the ground. Each drop is a word, and with enough, the ground becomes deeply hydrated, just as your mind becomes rich with vocabulary. You might not remember a word the first, fifth, or even 10th time. But with consistent, relaxed exposure, woven into engaging content, those words gradually, almost imperceptibly, embed themselves into your understanding. They become a natural part of your linguistic landscape, ready to be recognized when you hear or read them again. Now, after we've talked so much about input, listening and reading, you might be wondering, but what about speaking? Isn't that how I really learned to use the words? And you're absolutely right to ask. Speaking, or output, is undeniably vital to truly mastering a language. It's where all those words you've been absorbing finally get a chance to stretch their legs and explore the world. However, and this is a key insight from many polyglots, speaking often comes most effectively after you've built a solid foundation of input. Think of it like this. Before you can truly build a beautiful house, you need to gather all your materials, the bricks, the wood, the glass. Your input is like collecting those materials. Once you have a good store, then you can begin the construction, which is your output. When you start to speak, you're not just trying to remember words. You're engaging in real interaction. This is where the magic of practical application happens. When you converse with someone, whether it's a native speaker or another learner, those words you've only ever heard or read suddenly become tools in your hands. You actively recall them, piece them together, and mold them to express your unique thoughts. This active process solidifies them in a way passive reception never can. And here's another wonderful benefit: corrections from native speakers. When you speak, you make mistakes, and that's perfectly natural and even beautiful, because those mistakes are opportunities to learn. A native speaker gently correcting your word choice or pronunciation isn't a failure, it's a gift. It helps you fine-tune your understanding and integrate the word more accurately into your active vocabulary. This immediate, real-time feedback is incredibly powerful for growth. Beyond corrections, speaking also deepens your interest via conversation. When you can use the language to discuss topics you genuinely care about, to connect with people, to share laughter or thoughts, the language stops being just a subject you study and becomes a living, breathing part of your life. This emotional connection makes learning incredibly rewarding and self-perpetuating. The more you use it, the more you want to use it, and the more deeply those words settle into your mind. So, while speaking is crucial, the polyglot perspective often recommends practicing a lot of speaking later in the learning process, not necessarily right at the very beginning. Build that rich, deep reservoir of input first, and then, when you feel a natural urge to express yourself, dive into speaking. You'll find that many words are already waiting there, patiently, ready to be called upon. It's beautiful how all the parts of language learning don't exist in isolation. They are deeply, beautifully interconnected, like threads in a rich tapestry. We often separate listening, reading, speaking, and writing into distinct skills, but in reality, they are constantly influencing and reinforcing one another, creating a holistic learning experience. Think about reading, for instance. When you read, especially if you're truly engaged with the text, something fascinating happens in your brain. You're not just passively absorbing letters and words. Many of us, almost instinctively, engage in what's called inner speech. It's like a quiet voice inside your head, silently pronouncing the words as you read them, or even imagining yourself speaking the sentences. This silent articulation, This internal simulation of speaking helps to solidify the vocabulary and grammar patterns in your mind, connecting the visual input of reading with the motor memory of speech. It's a subtle but powerful way that reading supports your eventual speaking fluency. And then there's listening. When you listen, your brain isn't just a passive receiver either. It's an active participant, constantly predicting and anticipating what will come next. Based on the words you've heard, the context, and your existing knowledge, your mind is already jumping ahead, trying to guess the next word or phrase. This predictive power is incredibly important for comprehension. It means that the more you listen, the more your brain becomes attuned to the rhythms, common phrases, and grammatical structures of English, making it easier to not only understand but also to later produce those patterns yourself. This anticipation game is a core part of effective listening and a bridge to speaking. And speaking itself, that crucial output, draws so much from the input you've taken in. When you speak, you're essentially pulling from a vast internal library of stored memory and practiced language structures that you've accumulated through all your listening and reading. The more deeply ingrained these words and patterns are from repeated exposure, the more readily they come to mind when you need them. It's not just about recalling a single word. It's about accessing the whole web of connections. How that word is used in a sentence, what other words it commonly pairs with, and what emotion it conveys. Your speaking ability isn't just built on practice. It's built on the solid ground of what you've absorbed. This synergistic relationship among all four skills means that every piece of effort you put into one area, whether it's quietly reading a captivating story, attentively listening to a podcast, engaging in a conversation, or even jotting down a few thoughts, is contributing to the strength and fluidity of all the others. They are interwoven, and the more you nourish one, the more it helps the others to flourish. Now, let's talk about something that often concerns language learners, but really shouldn't: the idea of passive versus active vocabulary. It's very common to feel like you understand many more words when you read or listen than you actually use when you speak. This difference between what we understand and what we produce is completely normal, and it's actually a beautiful, natural part of language. Think of it this way: your passive vocabulary is like a vast reservoir of words that you recognize. These are the words that light up in your mind when you hear them in a conversation or see them on a page. You understand their meaning, perhaps even their nuances, but they don't necessarily spring to mind the moment you need to express something yourself. This is absolutely normal, even for native speakers. Yes, even in your own first language, you probably understand far more words than you actively use in your daily conversations. This larger passive vocabulary is not a problem at all. In fact, it's a tremendous asset. It's the foundation of your comprehension. When you're listening to someone speak, or reading a book, your passive vocabulary allows you to anticipate meaning, to fill in gaps, and to grasp the overall message even if you don't actively know every single word. It makes communication flow smoothly for you as a receiver of information. And here's the wonderful truth: your passive vocabulary isn't just sitting there idly. It's constantly working behind the scenes. The more you encounter these words through input, through listening and reading, the more they become familiar. And with enough consistent exposure and meaningful context, some of those passive words will naturally migrate into your active vocabulary. They'll become words you can use effortlessly, without thinking. It's a slow, organic process, and every word you understand, even passively, is supporting your overall journey to fluency. So, embrace your passive vocabulary. It's a sign of progress, not a limitation. Now, as we continue our gentle exploration of vocabulary, it's really important to acknowledge that your learning journey, and therefore your strategy, will beautifully evolve with your proficiency level. What works best for someone just starting out might be quite different from what an intermediate or advanced learner needs. It's like tending to a garden. The seeds need different care than the blossoming flowers. For those of you who are just beginning your English journey, or feel you are still building a foundational understanding, your focus should be primarily on what we call high-frequency words. These are the words that appear most often in everyday conversations, in simple stories, and in basic texts. Think of them as the bedrock of the language, the most essential building blocks. The most effective way to acquire these words, as we've discussed, is through repeated exposure within meaningful content. Simple mini-stories, repeated listening, and very basic reading materials are your best friends. Imagine listening to a short, engaging story over and over. Each time, those high-frequency words will appear, gently settling into your mind because they are presented in a context that makes sense, in a way that feels natural, like a familiar song. There's no pressure to memorize, just a calm, consistent presence of these vital words. Now, if you find yourself at an intermediate or advanced level, your strategy can lovingly expand. Once you have a solid grasp of high-frequency vocabulary, you're ready to venture into the world of lower-frequency words. These are the words that don't appear as often, but they add richness, precision, and depth to your understanding and expression. For you, the most powerful tool becomes wide, extensive reading and listening. This means diving into more complex articles, novels, podcasts, and even academic texts that pique your interest. The goal here isn't to meticulously look up every single unknown word. Instead, it's about allowing your brain to infer meaning from the surrounding context, from the flow of the story, or the topic being discussed. You're giving your mind a vast landscape of language to explore, and within that landscape, new words will naturally begin to make sense and eventually become part of your understanding. While the polyglot perspective generally steers away from rote memorization techniques like flashcards, especially as a primary method, there are still ways to gently assist your vocabulary acquisition, particularly for those trickier, less frequent words. One powerful and very beneficial approach is to organize vocabulary not as isolated items, but by patterns. Think about prefixes like un, meaning not, as in unhappy, or re, meaning again, as in rewrite. Consider suffixes, which change a word's function, or even common root words. When you start to see these patterns, you're not just learning one word. You're unlocking a whole family of words. Another gentle technique is to group vocabulary by themes. If you're passionate about, say, environmental issues, then gathering words related to climate change, conservation, or sustainability can be incredibly effective. When words are connected by a common idea, your brain creates a beautiful web of meaning, making them easier to recall and use. It turns vocabulary learning from a chore into a fascinating detective game, where you're uncovering the hidden connections within the language itself. So, whether you're a beginner gently laying bricks or an advanced learner exploring a vast linguistic landscape, remember to tailor your approach with kindness and curiosity, letting words unfold naturally as you engage with the language. Beyond organizing words by patterns or themes, there's another incredibly powerful habit that truly unlocks fluency, especially as you move past the beginner stage. Reading, and I mean really reading. Not just short texts or articles, but diving into longer pieces, novels, nonfiction books, whatever genuinely captivates your interest. And here's a subtle but significant distinction. For deeper learning, try to read on paper or on an e-reader that doesn't offer instant dictionary pop-ups with every tap. This might sound counterintuitive, or even a little scary, especially if your instinct is to look up every single unknown word. But trust me, this gentle push, this allowance for a little bit of ambiguity, is where true growth happens. When you're reading a physical book or an ebook without that constant digital crutch, you're encouraging your brain to infer meaning from context. You're learning to tolerate not knowing every single word, which is a crucial skill even for native speakers. Imagine trying to read a complex philosophical text in your own language. You might not grasp every nuance, but you get the overall meaning, don't you? It's the same in a new language. You push through, letting the narrative flow, letting your mind weave together the pieces you do understand, and often, the meaning of those unfamiliar words will slowly, subtly reveal itself through repeated exposure within different contexts. It's a beautiful, organic process. And speaking of beauty, finding joy in the reading process is absolutely paramount. Language learning should never feel like a grim chore. When you pick up a book, or an ebook, or even a long-form article that genuinely excites you, the learning becomes effortless. You're not just absorbing vocabulary. You're engaging with ideas, stories, and emotions that resonate with you. This emotional connection makes the words stick far more effectively than any flashcard ever could. It transforms vocabulary from abstract symbols into vibrant components of a world you care about. Building a consistent reading habit, even if it's just a few pages each day, sends a powerful signal to your brain. It tells your mind that you are comfortable in this linguistic space, that you are building a lasting relationship with the language. It's a quiet, profound declaration of fluency. It's not about speed or quantity at first, but about consistency and connection. As you read more, you'll naturally encounter words you know in new settings, reinforcing them, and you'll gently stumble upon new words, slowly expanding your understanding with each turn of the page. It's a journey of quiet discovery, one word, one sentence, one story at a time. Now, that sense of joy and connection we just spoke about with reading isn't just a nice to have. It's a fundamental pillar of effective vocabulary acquisition. It's about personal interest, about relevance. Think about it. Our brains are wired to pay attention to things that matter to us. Things that spark our curiosity or connect to our experiences. When content is personally interesting and relevant, the words within it don't just pass through our ears or eyes. They land, they settle, they become part of our mental landscape. This engagement isn't just about vocabulary, it's about the entire learning experience. This is why, when you're looking for materials, I strongly recommend a powerful combination. Audiobooks paired with their corresponding ebooks or physical books. This dual approach gives you both auditory and visual input, reinforcing the words from multiple angles. You hear the pronunciation, the intonation, the rhythm of the language, while simultaneously seeing the written form. It's incredibly effective because it taps into different learning pathways in your brain. And crucially, it allows you to slow down if you need to re-listen, or to reread a sentence that felt a bit murky. It's a gentle, supportive way to deepen your understanding. Beyond just the content itself, the quality of the narration in audio materials is incredibly important. A pleasant voice, an engaging delivery, someone who sounds genuinely interested in what they're saying. This significantly enhances your attention and, by extension, your retention of new vocabulary. Imagine trying to learn from a monotone, unenthusiastic speaker. Your mind would wander almost immediately. But a voice that draws you in, that tells a story with emotion and clarity, keeps you present and makes the learning feel effortless and enjoyable. It transforms a potentially passive listening experience into an active, immersive one. So, when you're making choices, whether it's a podcast, an audiobook, or a video, ask yourself, Does this voice sound good to me? Do I enjoy listening to this person? Because that enjoyment translates directly into how effectively your brain absorbs and integrates new words. And remember, this applies even to what might seem like drier topics. If you're interested in climate change, for example, don't force yourself to read a textbook you hate. Find a podcast about climate change with a passionate host, or an engaging documentary. Your personal connection to the subject matter will override any perceived difficulty with the language, allowing the vocabulary to sink in naturally. Choose what genuinely resonates with you. That's where the magic of learning happens. Building on that idea of choosing what genuinely resonates with you, it's also incredibly important to actively seek out and utilize authentic materials. This means moving beyond just language learning resources and diving into content made for native speakers. Think of podcasts, articles, videos, and even social media feeds that discuss topics you love. This is where you get real-world input, the language as it's actually used, with all its nuances, idioms, and natural rhythms. It's about immersing yourself in the language, not just studying it in isolation. When you listen to a podcast on a topic you're passionate about, or read an article that genuinely interests you, your brain is engaged in a much deeper way. The words become part of a larger, more meaningful context, which is precisely how vocabulary truly sticks and becomes part of your active understanding. And it's not just about passive consumption. You can actively integrate practice with these authentic materials. For instance, combine your listening with reading by finding transcripts for podcasts or articles you're listening to. This dual input reinforces the connection between the spoken and written forms of words. Then, to really solidify your understanding and retention, you can engage in exercises, perhaps something like sentence reordering. Take sentences from the material, mix up the words, and then try to reconstruct them. This kind of active engagement, using authentic materials, helps you internalize the structure and flow of the language, making the vocabulary not just something you recognize, but something you can truly use. It moves you from understanding words in isolation to comprehending them within the dynamic flow of real communication. Now, this brings us to a really crucial point, one that I feel deeply about and that often gets overlooked: the importance of student initiative. You see, while teachers, textbooks, and wonderful podcasts like this one can guide you, the ultimate responsibility for your language journey rests with you. It's about taking ownership, stepping up, and actively seeking out the content that truly resonates with you. Don't wait for someone else to hand you the perfect vocabulary list or the most engaging story. Become a detective in your own learning. Explore, experiment, and discover. Think of it as a personal quest to find the materials that excite your mind and spark your curiosity. This proactive approach, this sense of self-exploration and autonomy, is not just helpful, it's absolutely crucial for achieving true fluency. When you take the reins, when you decide what you want to learn from and how you want to engage with it, something remarkable happens. Your motivation deepens, your engagement soars, and your brain becomes much more receptive to new information. It's no longer a chore, it becomes an adventure. You start building a personalized learning ecosystem tailored exactly to your interests and your learning style. This initiative is what differentiates learners who eventually become fluent from those who stay stuck. It's about empowering yourself, trusting your own judgment to find what works, and understanding that the richest learning often happens when you follow your genuine interests, rather than just prescribed curricula. It's your journey, and you are the most important guide. Now, following on from the idea of finding content that truly engages you, let's talk about something that profoundly influences how much you actually absorb and retain: the voice itself. It's not just about what is being said, but how it's being said. Think about it. We've all encountered those textbook narrators, haven't we? The ones with a flat, monotonous tone, reading words without any discernible feeling. For English learners, listening to such a voice can feel like trying to grasp smoke. There's very little emotional connection, very little to make the information stick. And honestly, it often leads to low retention because our brains just aren't wired to pay attention to blandness. But when a narrator's voice carries emotion, when it sounds authentic and genuinely connected to the content, something magical happens. It's like a parent reading a story to a child. A parent doesn't just read the words. They infuse them with warmth, with excitement, with sadness. They bring the story to life through their tone and their feelings. And children learn so much more effectively this way, don't they? The same principle applies to language learning for adults. An engaging, emotional voice captivates your attention, makes the content more memorable, and allows your brain to form stronger connections with the vocabulary and grammar. It boosts the effectiveness of your language acquisition in ways that a sterile, detached voice simply cannot. It makes the learning experience not just educational, but deeply human and enjoyable. Now, expanding on the power of voice, let's turn the lens inward, to perhaps the most impactful voice of all in your learning journey, your own. It might sound simple, almost too simple, but one of the most powerful self-correction techniques you can employ is to record your own voice as you speak English. Think of it as having your own personal, infinitely patient tutor. After you've spoken, take a moment to listen back to your recording. Really listen. You'll begin to notice things you missed in the moment. A pronunciation detail, a hesitant pause, perhaps even a grammatical structure that didn't quite land right. This independent identification of your own mistakes is incredibly powerful. It's not about criticizing yourself. It's about becoming your own language detective. When you discover these things yourself, the learning goes deeper. It's an active process of self-awareness and self-correction that no textbook or app can fully replicate. This practice fosters a much more effective and lasting form of learning, making you intimately aware of your progress and the areas where you can gently improve. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation, perhaps feeling a little nervous or excited, and suddenly, the perfect English word just disappears? It feels like it was right there, on the tip of your tongue, and then it vanishes, leaving you with an awkward pause or a scramble for a less precise alternative. This is such a common experience, and it can be incredibly frustrating, almost as if your brain has decided to play a little trick on you. The truth is, this isn't a trick. It's a very human response to pressure. When we are under stress, even mild social pressure, our brains can react in ways that temporarily hinder our ability to access stored information. The emotional state we're in directly affects our cognitive functions, and recalling vocabulary is certainly one of them. It's not that you don't know the word, it's that the pathway to retrieve it becomes momentarily blocked or slowed down. But here's the reassuring part. This disappearing act of words is something you can train your brain to overcome. The key lies in consistent, regular speaking practice, especially in situations that might feel a little challenging at first. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it under varying conditions, the stronger and more resilient it becomes. Each time you push through that feeling of pressure and speak anyway, even if you stumble a little, you are building comfort. You are teaching your brain that these moments of mild stress are not threats, but simply opportunities for communication. With repetition, the neural pathways for word retrieval become more robust, allowing you to access your vocabulary more quickly and efficiently, even when the spotlight is on you. So, embrace those moments of slight difficulty. they are where true fluency is forged. In our modern world, it's impossible to talk about learning without mentioning artificial intelligence, or AI. Tools like ChatGPT have emerged as incredibly powerful resources, and for language learners, they can be quite fascinating and helpful. Imagine needing an example sentence for a specific grammar point. You can simply ask ChatGPT to generate a few, or even to explain a complex rule in simpler terms. It's also wonderful for practicing conversations. In a way, you can type out your thoughts, and the AI can respond, creating a kind of written dialogue. This allows you to explore different topics, try out new vocabulary, and get immediate feedback on your phrasing without the pressure of a real-time human interaction. It can be a very safe and private space to experiment with the language. However, it's important to remember that AI tools, for all their impressive capabilities, are just that, tools. They are support systems, fantastic for practice and clarifying doubts, but they are not a replacement for genuine human communication. True fluency, the kind that feels natural and deeply satisfying, develops through authentic interactions with other people. The nuances of human emotion, the spontaneous flow of conversation, the subtle cues in body language, and the unpredictable nature of real dialogue. These are things AI cannot fully replicate. So, while you absolutely should use these helpful AI friends, always prioritize putting yourself in situations where you can speak with real humans. That's where the magic truly happens, where your vocabulary comes alive in the most meaningful way. So, as we bring our thoughts together on this journey of vocabulary learning, let's hold on to one crucial insight. Real human communication is the ultimate key. While we have incredible tools at our fingertips, like our AI companions, they are just that, tools. They are wonderful for practice, for clarification, for building a comfortable space to experiment, but they are not the destination itself. The true magic, the profound understanding, the deeply rooted fluency, emerges from those authentic, meaningful interactions with other human beings. It's in the laughter, the shared stories, the unexpected detours of conversation, and the beautiful messiness of real life that your words truly find their purpose and become deeply ingrained. So, please, continue to listen deeply, read broadly, and most importantly, speak with your heart. Seek out those connections, for it is through them that your vocabulary will not only grow but truly flourish, allowing you to express yourself fully and beautifully in English. Thank you for joining me today, for sharing this time, and for your dedication to learning. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and know that every word you learn brings you closer to the world.